When I came in here, I was an alcoholic, I was a drug addict. I really identified with that sort of lifestyle in that past. I didn't know anything else, really. I got into booze and drugs, not necessarily at an early age, but once I did. I went full on. And really, that's about all I really want to talk about it as far as that in my life. We'll get to that probably throughout my speech tonight. I'm going to ask you guys, does everybody know how to do booze and drugs, first of all? I mean, why else are we here, right? We know that part. We know how to get through that. My sponsor said, if we want to know how to get drunk and high, we'll ask you, Nick. And I was like, that was great, But what he asked me was, what are you doing today to stay sober? That's always really been the question for me, It's a daily process. I did booze and I did drugs every single day. That was my lifestyle. I didn't get drunk or high everything. I figured out it was just better to stay that way. It became a job, it became horrible, and I got sick and tired of it. That didn't get me to stop, though. What really got me to stop was I was looking at a couple decades in prison, and I got out on bail, and I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to be stuck in prison for probably 30 years. It's not like it used to be, I didn't think, in prison where you could just get whatever you wanted, especially since I was really into some designer drugs. And I needed to find a different way. And I thought, the people at AA have done this for a while. Maybe they have something that I can offer. But you know what? Be truthful, I had nowhere else to go. I came in the last 10 minutes of, I think it was the 1 o'clock meeting. And I was crying. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stay sober. From what you guys have heard, I found out while I was in jail for a few days that my son's mom had gotten cancer. She was pregnant with my son, and I was probably never going to see them again. And I didn't know if he was going to stay alive. I didn't know if she was going to stay alive. And let me say this, I think this is more scary for any of us, if we're truthful. I was probably never going to be able to do booze and drugs again, at least the way I wanted to. So I had to figure something else out. I cried. I did. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. I was defeated. I had nowhere else to go. And there were some nice people here that gave me their phone numbers. I still have that meeting list, by the way. Maybe I'll just mess with them and call them at random, so I never did anyway, But they shared their time, they shared their love, they looked at me in the eye and they understood, I don't know much about my first month and a half of sobriety, really. It was more of a trip probably coming off drugs than being on them. And, I think a lot of us can understand that. I just went to a lot of meetings. I went to 1, 2, 3 a day. Because when I came here, when I went to any meeting, I don't mean just here, there was something magical. That craving, those obsessions, those thoughts for a moment, for maybe an hour, went away. I felt a sense of ease and comfort. Okay? I had never felt that before. The horrible thing was coming off of booze and drugs. I look at it now as a gift, but I didn't at the time. My consciousness came out. There was something where I started feeling bad about the way I lived. I never did. I'll be honest about it. I got drunk, I got high, I enjoyed it, okay? And, I was the type of person that, and I'll even say this, I was in AA for a little bit before. I was in it for about 6 months. And I went to meetings regularly, enjoyed the fellowship both here, Taylorville, and Decatur. You guys, welcome here. Good to see y'all. And, after about 7 months, didn't work no steps, didn't get into the program side of things. And I found out real quickly that this disease can catch up to you. I came back from a trip to Las Vegas for my birthday. I didn't drink. I didn't use drugs. But when I came back, I can't explain it. Then I can now. All I could do was sit in the house for a week and smoke dope. Don't know why. And then, you have the family and everybody asking, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? I don't know. That was just horrible. And the guilt and the shame we felt, or I felt anyway, I tried a lot of things before I came into AA just to get sober. I tried just quitting, and that didn't work. I tried quitting, going to the gym. That didn't work. I tried just coming to meetings. That didn't work. Tried going to school, and I did really well for a little bit, but the bottom fell out. I tried getting a really nice job. I was city clerk in my town. Again, the bottom fell out. And what I started noticing progressively was every time I went back out, I had to do more and more. And every time I went out, the consequences got harder, and the intervals between those consequences got shorter and shorter. My last day out there is my sobriety date. My sobriety date is 7/15/2011. I got to think of that because I have mixed that up with my son's birthday. He was born 5 days later. People kind of look at you funny at the doctor's office when you give them your sobriety date, and they're like, "That's not your son's birthday." And then, once or twice I've actually said, "Oh, that's my AA birthday," and I'm like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that either," And they give you even a weirder look at that point. But that morning was the last time I took a drink or hit. I fell out. I took a handful of prescription medicine, and zank. I was out for like 2 hours. Woke back up, and here comes what they talk about: jails, institutions, and death. I'm one of the fortunate ones that know what that is in probably a 3-hour period. Cops came and got me. Here I am going to the hospital, and I tried to kill myself. It was trazodone, what was it? Trazodone and a Stag beer. That was the worst. That was the worst. I mean, let me say this. That's the end of it. When you're hitting the warm Stag and a handful of pills, it's terrible, But I knew that I had enough. So here I am. I came a lot to the 10:30 meetings because they just started. And the beautiful thing was about those meetings at the time, they were very intimate. They were very close. We didn't sit outside the circle. We sat inside. We talked to one another. We cross-talked. I pretty much kind of took over the meetings at that point because, let me say this, all that junk that I had going on, I needed to know how not to kill myself because it was horrible. I needed to know how not to go back out because it was horrible. The pain and the suffering just was ungodly, okay? And let me say this, what do I know? I couldn't fix it. I think we've all tried to fix it. I don't care if we've been inside the program or outside the program. If we could fix it, would anybody be here tonight? I wouldn't. It's Friday night. I'd be sitting in my jammies, right? I'd be watching Netflix. That's what I like to do now. I don't stay out party, but... So in that time, things were going better. I started picking up the jargon, if you will, and listening to what people said and started applying things. One of the first things I remember was there was a lady talking about, God and how she had to fire God. And I thought, oh, man, I just got fired that day. Because I was playing God with myself, and it wasn't working. If it was, great, more power to me. But everything that I was trying, nothing. So it was here. And like I told you guys before, I had been in AA before. I knew what I needed to do to stay sober this time because I knew what I didn't do last time. I was going to have to redouble my efforts if I wanted to not only stay sober, which is not my goal. I wanted to feel good. I felt horrible, and I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And what does that mean is I needed someone to show me how to do this 12-step program. It's rather unfortunate. I didn't know how to pick a sponsor. I had difficulty, to say the least, and I'll just leave it at that for now. The one thing I tried that was different, though, was I prayed to this higher power, this divine being, and I said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Please help. I need help to stay sober. And I came to the 1 o'clock meeting. It was, and there was a lot of people there. And it come my turn fairly quickly, and I said, look, you guys, I don't know anything about picking a sponsor today. I'm not asking for anybody to be my sponsor. I need someone to talk to me after the meeting. And, people were sharing their hope with me and telling me what was working for them. And Then came to that one guy you don't want to speak. Okay, he's in the corner, right? There's the same corner. And he said, I'll be your temporary sponsor. At that point, I felt okay. I felt for the first time since I walked in that door like I might be okay today. I don't have to go out and drink and use tomorrow. I don't have to go kill myself tonight, you know. That man invited me to his home. He showed me this beautiful program. And, you know, and what really worked for him, he knew what he was doing, and he knew what he was doing so well that I had a co-sponsor, okay? And I had, I know they don't talk about having two sponsors. That's how sick I was, let's face it, okay? It took some guy with 40 years of sobriety and 30 years of sobriety to get through to me. And it was magical, you know? We sat around and I would just listen to these two guys talk about their experience, their strength, and their hope, and this real program, not just the meetings, but living AA outside of this place, and how through this program and through God, they don't have to drink and they're happy. I don't care about not drinking and doing drugs if I'm miserable. I want to do this and feel good about it, you know? That's what they told me I could do. They said, Cliff said, he goes, you know that pink cloud they talk about? He goes, you don't ever have to get off of that. Work steps 1 through 9 to the best of your ability. Do 10, 11, and 12 every single day. You don't ever have to come down from that pink cloud. And then came the fun part. You know, I started reading this big book, and it was magical. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but when I opened the pages, my hands were doing something. My hands were drinking and doing drugs. And so there was some ease and comfort I got by just opening that book. Because you can go to meetings, let me say this, but as soon as I left the meeting, that restless, irritable, and discontent feeling just crept right back in. It was meetings, I'm sorry, for me at the beginning were like a Band-Aid. And I went to a lot of them, but I needed something more. I always needed more drug, let's face it. So I'm going to need some more AA, right? And I'm reading this book and trying to figure it out. And I'll be honest, I always tell my guys, just, that I help out, start reading the book. I said, I don't remember anything I read. I would sit there sometimes and read a paragraph, and I was such in a daze from, the booze and the drugs that, oh crap, I gotta start all over, They told me to, open up the big book, and everything I knew about staying sober was on the first 2 pages. And I'll just tell you guys, and I'll show you here, because as you notice, it's blank. That's what I knew about staying sober, I still mess with my guys and do that too, by the way. We have fun in AA. But it's true. I didn't know nothing. And so Cliff, we started talking about what this really was. They say this is a disease, right? I have a disease, and I don't know about the rest of you. That actually made me feel better that this is a disease. I'm not a bad person. I'm not a sinner. I'm not wrong. I'm not stupid, okay? I just couldn't figure it out. He explained it real easy. Disease. There's ease is in the word, right? And I'm looking to be at ease, and I never was. I was at dis-ease, If we were at ease, why would we come back out here? I don't know. I wouldn't come back in to say, hey, what are you guys doing here? I'm having a great time doing drugs. I just wanted to check out what you guys are up to today, This is the last place I would be. But let me say this, and I know this is kind of off the subject. You ever see anybody at a meeting, and they might be drunk or high? Give them some credit. Because who the heck would really want to be here unless they really needed it, no matter what? I know we probably want to tell them to be quiet, but that's a different story. Try to love on them. Because that takes a lot of more guts than just coming in the first time when we're, quote unquote sober. He explained to me there's 2 parts to my dis-ease. There's this physical side, which helps out. I'm different than everybody else. At least, except for you guys, right? We have this physical side that when we take in booze or drugs, it's a never-ending cycle. So every time I drink or I take a hit, I want more. And so I try to satisfy that, and I take a drink and I hit, and I want more. It's a never-ending cycle. Now, I will say this, we'll get fuzzy enough, we'll forget about that craving for a minute. But as soon as we go to bed, if we do, those physical feelings come back. And that's why we never stop. I explain it to guys like this that I help. Most of you might know this. If you're out of a beer and you have to wait at the bar, and you're like, sitting there tapping, and he's taking forever, she's taking forever, and that pain that we'd feel, or if you're waiting for the drugs to go back around to you. Everybody else is kind of just take it or leave it. And we're sitting there like, come on, I got drugs to do, let's go, That's what separates me from everybody else. I physically can't take it or leave it. There might have been a point in time when I could. I can't anymore. So that helped me understand that part. And as long as that stuff is not in my system, those physical cravings aren't as bad, okay? Horrible part is even with weed, that stays in your system for 30 days, and I did it all. It'd be easier for me to tell you what I didn't do rather than for me to tell you what I did do, I didn't really smoke crack that much. I didn't do heroin much, unless it was in an ecstasy pill. Pretty much that was it. Everything else, including bath salts, that's what I came in on. I weighed 140 pounds at the time. So what happens? Many of us have quit. Many of us have had to quit. We've been in jail, or we just tried out, or we just stopped on our own. But why do we go back? That's the important part. There's something different about us that makes us want to go back. And when we started talking about it, me and my sponsor, he showed me this little diagram. And on this diagram, I show everybody this. I draw it myself. It had a little barometer, like a thermometer, if you will. And inside of there was a certain point. Here, kind of illustrate here. If I went past this point, I was going to drink and do drugs, okay? And guess what? It was already full. So I had to come to AA just to keep that down. Problem is, time does not heal all wounds for me. What was inside of that was my thoughts, my feelings, and my emotions, and they were trapped. I could not get them out. I tried. Normal people can just let things go and, let go and let God. And I was trying. Let me say this. Those things weren't really working for me. I needed a program of action that was going to really do it. But I saw for the first time what was necessary to keep the booze and the drugs out of my system and me from going back to there. Because when I take that first one, it starts this nasty little cycle, and it goes and it goes. And it looks like a toilet flushing by the time I get done. And what happens? I flush my life down the toilet. And I really did. I should not be here, you guys. I should be in jail. And I probably should be killed in jail from what the hell I was out there doing. I'll be honest with you. It's an incredible sense of mercy from my God that I am here. And I think that if you don't feel loved, I'm going to tell you this. You're alive. There is something out there that absolutely loves you because you got a chance right now, today, to stay sober. That's what I held on to. Like, I'm not dead yet and I'm not in jail yet. Maybe something could happen, I was powerless. I just couldn't fix this problem. I'm terrible at cars. If I got a car problem, I don't go to, myself to fix it. My dad's really good at it. I'm terrible. Or I'm going to go to a professional. And the professionals, I believe, are right here in this room. Professionals are also in hospitals, in treatment centers, or doctors. There's professionals all over. And some of us need a little bit of everything. Whatever it takes for you to do it, please. Because we might not have tomorrow, My biggest problem, as far as the powerlessness goes, I heard it put really well, and I kind of want to talk about this, was my arrogance. Again, I thought if I just did this, I would stay sober. If I did that, I would stay sober. It was really arrogant on my part. The improper use of my will. A lot that our big book talks about. We have this will that does work. If you ever noticed an alcoholic or addict, we have really strong wills and everything else. We need to figure out how to properly do that. For me, that meant I need to be persistent. I need to work these steps to the best of my ability. That's what worked for me. I read the doctor's opinion because I'll I'm not gonna lie, Miss Betty told us to, like a lot. And, well, she stayed sober a while. Let's see what this stuff said. I just remember one thing. It talked about a psychic change. And if you ever, I couldn't explain to you because I was out of it in my mind at the time, but I looked up the word psychic because I knew it had like something to do. I thought about, ESP and that, but psychic is just your mind. And I need to change the way I think because my problem was every single thing I did was like Thomas the Choo Choo Train, like I set a train track, and guess what? It always went to get drunk and get high. So I need to reprogram my mind. That's really the essence of what the 12 steps are for me, is going to meetings, and this fellowship kept me enclosed in a circle of protection. But the 12 steps started reprogramming my mind so I don't think alcoholically. I know some people still say they're sick. I don't. I believe, because I came to believe that I would be normal. I might have human problems or first level problems today. I don't think about using booze or drugs. For me, when that mental obsession really went away is when I had a thought, and it came into a meeting, when I was at a meeting. Alcoholics and addicts have went through some traumatic shit in our lives. That's the technical term for it, We all have. Sometimes it's been from other people, sometimes it's been from us, right? And I did both. I had some problems that I thought were bad. I created some problems that were bad, And, excuse me. Just lost my train of thought there. So, but all these problems for me weren't, they might lead a normal person to get drunk or get high, at least once. For me, why did I keep doing it? Because I kept doing it. When I say it like this, a normal person might have a drink because their dad died. A normal person might take a hit of weed because their girlfriend broke up with them. They don't keep doing it like I did, okay? When I thought to myself that I kept doing it, that's my responsibility, I have never seriously, I've thought about it, but not seriously considered ever taking a drink or drug again. That's the moment that my life changed. That's when I started feeling normal a little bit, Of course, I still kept going to meetings. I still was reading my big book because it was finally starting to make sense. I'll be honest with you guys, it took me 6 months and working the steps at least one time to figure out those 1 o'clock meetings actually had like a point, and like they had this meeting, like it was traditions meeting, or it was whatever the topic of the day was. I thought it was about me, honestly, and I don't mean that in a very selfish way. I thought, this is about staying sober. And I need to convey that because I don't know what I'm doing. And my second sponsor, Virgil, liked to point out, he goes, you know why we let you talk so much? Why? I want to hear how stupid you were. He was really assessing me, and that's the truth, I laughed about that because it's true, I was dumb, I was ignorant, I lacked the knowledge that they had, I came to believe one thing, that working these 12 steps, I would be normal. I would be useful, I would be whole. And I still believe that today. For me, it's about finding a sense of completeness in my life with every single problem I've had. The people that I've seen went back out, and including my own self, I went back out because I didn't have any completeness about a problem. I didn't really, face everything and recover the way they talk about. And it's scary. There were times when I was having a psychological test done after about 17 months sober, and I'd already worked the steps one time at least. I left some stuff out that came up that night, so I had to call my sponsor, and I said, look, I'm going to pull you on your back porch, we got to talk tomorrow. I drove from Chicago, because I felt like at that point I'm either going to drink and use, or I'm going to get this stuff out and I'm going to work this program. I went to his house. It wasn't anything that I admitted on purpose, but I believe God lets stuff out when we're ready. I lived horrible. I treated people like shit, and I feel bad for that. I take responsibility for that, but I'm not going to take any guilt, shame, or remorse anymore. That stuff's going to eat me alive and keep me in the booze and in the drugs. What I need to do is own my actions up, face them, and try to rectify the situation as best I can, or at least be willing. I made a decision to do this program. That's, for me, is the third step. It's pretty simple. I made a decision to do steps 4 through 12 to the best of my ability. When someone says, "What's God's will for me?" Well, you're in an AA meeting. We're in this program. It's probably to work all 12 steps to the best of our ability. That's what I was looking to do. That's what I was going to do. I woke up, kind of a funny story. I woke up on a Sunday morning real early. My friend Matt, asked me to go to church with him. I went to church, and I knew that was the day I was going to get on my hands and knees down when they have the little invitation, and I was going to say that third step prayer, just to the best of my ability, in my own head. I came back, as always, I'm a tearful person. I came back crying, but I knew that's the moment I was going to do something, and do something different, and take this action to fix myself. I believe God, let go and let God. Well, He's going to give it. He gave it back to me. He said, "You got to do an inventory. You've got to, you're going to have to share yourself with another human being. You're going to have to rectify your past." I couldn't just pray to God, "Hey, I hope it gets better," and it doesn't. He gave us these tools for a reason, and the answers, I believe, are really obvious for me. And so, immediately I took some action. I got some pen and paper. I started reading about it, and we were getting ready to do this. My sponsor and I, he gave me some worksheets. I was very consistent with doing my 4-step. For an hour or two a day at different times, I went and basically puked it up. To me, a 4-step is the big, the big hangover. We're going to have to pay for all the booze and the drugs we did, at least I did. And that was the point where, it felt like I was puking it every day. You can write it on paper, and it's difficult. I understand. All I ask is do what I did. Be consistent. Persist. Will persistence. It took me about a month and a half to do it. I just did it to the best of my ability, and we didn't talk about a 4-step inventory or a 10-step inventory. This was going to be the first of many, 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 many inventories. This is the first of what I'm going to do every single day so that I keep that little barometer down and I don't ever have to go back out again. I took responsibility. I started looking at myself objectively. It talks about prayer and meditation. I think that the inventory process teaches us how to start, in a sense, activating a higher level of thought. Start watching ourselves, start watching our actions. At least I did. I don't necessarily want to have to make more amends. It's going to happen. Let me say that. But, I try to think before I act. Or I try to think when I act. Or I might think right after I act, But if I didn't take this process daily and do it on paper, that was the practice, I wouldn't be very good at it. I would have to make a lot of amends. It would, and let's face it, that's not always the best, that's not always the most easiest thing to do. And I'm just trying to minimize what I need to do to stay sober, because why make things more difficult? Let's face it, in early sobriety, it was still hard not to drink and use drugs sometimes, at least to go back to it, because it's a knee-jerk reaction for me. That's what scares me. If I let up, boom, I call them the whiteouts instead of having a blackouts. I just end up, for some odd reason, at the bar or at the dope house, 3 or 4 drinks or 3 or 4 hits down, not knowing how I got there again. And I never want to do that. I don't know about anybody else who's done this, but it's a self-appraisal. And what I really found, I'll just tell you guys, I was selfish. That was the biggest thing. It's admitting my wrongs. I'm selfish, I'm dishonest, I'm inconsiderate, and I'm fearful. And I had to spend about 3 more hours explaining this to my sponsor over and over, and I could have just done that. Really. That's how simple it was. But it's in my heart, it's in my head, it's knowing this and admitting it to myself. I'm not saying that we're bad because of that. And the magical thing was, as I was getting ready to finish up with this process, Cliff and Virgil sat down. We was at the art club, the old art club, and they started sharing their inventories, their original inventories with me. Because I thought, man, and I'm sure we all feel this way, I'm a horrible human being. I've been puking this stuff up for a while. Nobody else is as bad as I am. And I kind of went, huh. I was kind of scared. I don't want to share what was going on, but man, I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel like I was the only one. And it was a relief. I knew at that point, again, the magic of this process is happening. That something is about to really change in my life. Cliff left. He left to Florida. I ran him off. I'll be honest, you guys. He had enough. And so he left me with Virgil. And yeah, I was scared. Here I tell everybody like this. Look, Virgil, love him to death. He's one of my best friends this day, but he looks like Popeye. Okay? And we have to go downstairs, and he's going to have to hear all the nasty, horrible stuff I've done to people. And let's face it, Virgil might be packing, and he might just shoot me at the end, or somewhere in between. That's what I really thought, But I was willing to go to any lengths to stay sober. The big book talks about we have to prepare for a long talk, and I was preparing in the shower that morning, or for a couple of days actually, trying to tell him all this nasty, horrible stuff that I've done. And I thought, well, let's go get Taco Bell because it's going to be a long day, And we went and ate Taco Bell, and then we came down here, and there just came a point where after 3 hours, look, I know what the problem is. The problem was the way I was living my life. The problem was I wasn't considerate of other people. The problem was I was selfish. It gets a little deeper. Ultimately, I've done a few 4 steps since then. The root of my problem is fear. I was adopted, you guys, from an early age. I've only known my mom and my dad, and I never thought this was a problem. However, I physically wonder what it was like to be a little baby and be taken away from your mother. And although I never thought it bothered me, it could. I'm very reserved. I'm very hard to get into a relationship with. And, it was based off of fear. When I was 14, my father and my adopted father, God bless him, he's my father. It's a pain in the butt, but he's still my father. He told me that he didn't want to be my dad anymore. He doesn't remember this. He's not a drinker. He was pissed off at me for what I think is a really ridiculous reason, because I didn't want to play sports anymore, And for me, it crushed me. It devastated me. If you start to look at how I reacted to that, everything went downhill from there. That was my fault, not his. I've seen good people, good helpful people, doctors and nurses and stuff. When something traumatic happens to some people, they rise to the occasion, they better themselves, they help other people. Me, went on the downward slide real fast. And it started with selling guns, moving to drugs. I'm like, yeah, I found the answer to life, right? And we all did. Whether it was booze, whether it was drugs, I believe booze is a drug. It filled that hole that was inside of me temporarily until it quit working. I had to figure out how to let go of that, and I didn't know how until they showed me this program. Steps 6 and 7, let me just say this. After I let go of all that stuff, I felt normal that day. And I didn't feel anything magical, because when my magic really came was the day that I accepted my responsibility for being an alcoholic and addict, which came a lot sooner than that. I went home right after talking to Verge and sharing myself with him. I read the part in the big book that talks about step 6 and step 7. I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want to be that fake-ass, wannabe druggie who was scared to really be his true self. God, take this all away, because I don't want to be miserable anymore. Take it all, whatever it is. I got on my hands and knees. I said a little prayer. And as soon as that happened, I went and took a nap, you guys. I was tired, okay? We're building this archway to freedom, and I'm trying to get out, okay? And it's exhausting sometimes, Don't be afraid to stop and kind of enjoy it, but don't pause too long. you know. I took a little nap, and guess what? It's time to make a list, make an amends. And let me say this about making amends. It's not saying I'm sorry. I don't know about anybody else. I've said sorry before. They've gotten real sorry. They're really worthless. I think about it like this. And when I say I think, it's because I've done this a few times. If someone hurt me, what would I want to hear from them? I want to hear what they did, how they feel now, and do they really want to put things right? You know, I always ask people, will you forgive me? Not can you forgive me? I don't try to push myself on them. I turn it over to them. I give them the power. What they do with it's their own business. I've had great luck with it. As far as there's different theories, do we go out and just do this all at once? Do we do this in God's time? I'm one of those that both can work. You know, there's a time when it'll happen. Some things we need to do now, some things we need to do later. I needed to grow a lot still at this process. One of the hardest things is I just admit my faults. I admit I was selfish, I was inconsiderate, I was fearful, you know, and I was dishonest. I don't talk about what I did because I did that with my son's mom, and it was just like opening up the wound again. And I saw the pain in her eyes, and believe me, I caused her a hell of a lot of pain. You know, all I got to do is say, look, I don't believe that just being sober is enough. I'm going to start living differently. I'm going to start I want to have a relationship with these people, you know. I've been driving down the street, and my son was in the back, and he was really young at the time. And I had seen my boss. My boss had moved away. He was just in town for the day or whatever. I stopped. I pulled in, and I said, look, I got to talk to you. He's like, okay. I was like, look, I lied to him. I said I was depressed for a month, and I was sitting there doing bath salts every day. I said, look, I lied to you. I'm really sorry. And that's all I got out. He says, I understand. You know, he's my friend to this day. And I think and I hate to say this, but he's someone that needs love too. And just showing people love. I'm not as scared to show people love than not give it back. I failed at making amends, or when the opportunity might be there. I don't know if this is really the case or not. We were at, Hy-Vee Grill, and my sponsor and my sponsee, and it was late one night, and I saw another old boss, but he's with his family. And I really wanted to put things right because I acted like an arrogant prick with him, and I just wanted to say, look, thank you for the opportunity. He kept me in a job for 2 years, you know, and I acted arrogant. And he just wanted to know how I was doing. I didn't get a chance to make amends because I'm not going to do that right in front of him. You know me, I'm going to cry about it probably. So I would like to, when the time is right, do that, but that wasn't then. And I'm always willing though. Before I got done with all my amends, and I'll face it, I've been trying to track some of them down, I haven't. I need to start continuing with that inventory. Steps 10, 11, and 12. Because if I didn't, my barometer was filling back up. I lived like an asshole for years, and I didn't get sick overnight. I didn't get better overnight. I didn't become this saint or anything like that. I still acted like a jerk, and my conscience really started feeling it. You know, especially when we don't have our booze and drugs to numb us, right? So I started writing out that inventory. I started doing it regularly. And the feeling of relief, it was daily. I do it every single morning now because I have a little 5-year-old, and by the time, like right now, normally we'd be laying in bed, and I'd be like, go to sleep, buddy. But I'm tired. I'm exhausted. So I do that when I have a little quiet time, and I get this out, you know. I've looked over my past, and I've seen how fearful I was about everything. Lack of power was my dilemma. Here's a little secret I found for me. That's because I ran off of fear. And trying to run off of fear, it would run out the worst possible moment when we needed it the most. I couldn't do that anymore. I needed to start living off of love. Because for me, I believe God is love. And it's going to be the only thing that sustains us. Everybody here is showing me love, you know, and I hope that I can show you guys love too. I hope tonight that hopefully something sticks with you, and you get sort of what I got. because man, it's wonderful. You know, love. I don't want. Oh, love is great, but it really is. You know, and I mean like friendship. You know, I hope I make some new friends tonight. I hope I still have some old friends. You know, it's good seeing you guys. I saw a guy here, and he see me over in Decatur, over in Taylorville, and I still remember him. He still remembers me. You know, he didn't call me, hey, you jerk, because we didn't know each other from back in those times. We know each other because we're trying to stay sober together, brother. You know, prayer and meditation. For me, I'll just tell you guys my secret. Every morning I get up, I ask God for a day of sobriety. I ask Him for the knowledge of His will for me. I ask for the power to carry that out. And God, please have mercy on Kellen and myself. That's pretty much the long and the short of my prayers. I do the third step, the seventh step, and I do the prayer of St. Francis. I don't pray to God a lot because God knows what I need better than I probably do. What I do is try to listen. The one thing that I found, though, in the prayer of St. Francis, I said it so many times, one day it dawned on me, this is probably how I should be living my life, you know. I want love. I should be able to give it. I should be forgiving, not want forgiveness. It's not always easy, you know, but every morning I make that statement to God, I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to try. I'm going to do my best. And over time, it's gotten better and better, you know. I still judge. I still am a human being. I still have faults, you know. They're not the alcoholic and addict, you know, faults that I had. They're human faults. Hopefully, one day, I don't want to say sainthood, but I really believe we could be these blissful human beings that are just almost purely loving one another in a very friendly and kind way, you know. Sometimes that means being tough, but not always. Sometimes we need to just sit somebody down and look them face to face and say, look, I ain't going to tell you what your drug dealer used to tell you. I ain't going to tell you what the guy at the bar used to tell you. I'm going to tell you what you need to stay alive and stay sober, because I give a crap, you know. This summer was difficult for me. I was at home a lot with my son and didn't have a lot of me time, let's face it. I needed that. I wasn't going to meetings probably as much as I needed to, because AA gives us a life, and I want to be there for my son because I'm all he's got. My life is given to him so that he can not hopefully go through the same shit that I did, you know. But it was starting to drive me nuts. And I'll be honest, the idea that women, because I'm a stay-at-home dad, the idea that women go and hide in the bathroom or the closet and drink wine made sense, okay? I didn't want to do it, but it made sense. And I was watching, it's a strange chain of events, but this is how God gets through to me. I was watching TMZ one day, and you know how someone's going to have something wonderful come up. Well, it's Russell Brand. And if anybody knows, Russell just celebrated 14 years of sobriety. He was living in California at the time, and they're getting ready to show. Well, here's Russell Brand. I'm like, oh God, here's something with Katy Perry or whatever. And it just caught my ear. Russell's sitting there and he's feeding homeless people. He's asking them, how you doing? He's giving a shit. You know, he's showing people real love. You know, what better example that we could do in sobriety? You know, I don't believe it's just we need to love each other. I think we need to love the whole world, because who the hell is going to if we don't? And so I started kind of researching Russell, and Russell said one of the best things he ever did was meditation. And for me, meditation has been a process. First, it's just simply prayer, talking to God. And I think Bill did a wonderful job of describing this. Meditation is listening to God. And I started, when I came to AA, just driving here, because I got a half an hour drive every day, with no music. I took some quiet time. Then I started reading the big book, or I started reading something spiritual in nature every day, because, again, I needed to reprogram myself, because I didn't want to hear this. I wanted to hear something soothing. Eventually, I was going to go sit in that closet, and I had to figure something out, and I started actually looking into real meditation. There's a monk, we'll just say he's Christian, that his name is Father Thomas Keating. What he did was he was really kind of looking at the Buddhist way of meditating, but he saw it from a Christian perspective and was bringing it to the Christian world. He's been very instrumental in doing this. And so I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm going to start trying this, because he has free YouTube videos on how to do this, right? So I start meditating. I start finding some peace. I start hearing some more of that stuff I need to put on my inventory. But I need to make friends with that demon that's inside of me, because I need to figure out what I need to do to make it whole and complete. It wasn't that I've gained anything from meditation. It's what I've lost. I've lost fear. I've lost doubt. I've lost the ability to be so hateful at times. And I actually got into, I went paid for it, transcendental meditation. It's wonderful. I was sitting outside about 4:30 today, out on a carpet, just laying there, and I ended up just kind of zoned out. I don't know about the rest of y'all. For me, my mind stopped for just a moment. If you guys ever listen to The Insanity, and I know mine was bad, it never stopped. That's what I was trying to use booze and drugs for. It finally stopped. It does that. I'm getting pretty decent at it, but it's going to be a lifetime process. You know, it's one of the best things that I think we could do is really listen to the monster that's inside of us and understand. Because at this point, I really need to be my own advocate. I need to be do my own self-appraisal. And this might go as an argument. I need to sponsor myself sometimes. You know, because not everybody needs to tell me what I need to do. I need to figure it out for myself. You know, because who's going to know me but me? Especially if I'm sitting in a jail cell, especially if I'm all alone. And I really like my quiet time. It's one of the most rejuvenating things that I do. I do it twice a day now. Now, practice of these, I'm not going to share with what I've done with sponsees and stuff. That's their side of the street, you know. But what I do want to say is the moment I leave here is the moment AA starts for real. In here is just practice for me. It's about talking about ideas. It's about sharing what does and does not work. And the moment I step outside, it's time for the big game, you know. One thing that I've learned is don't be afraid to fail. Just don't take that first drink or that first hit. The best thing that I can do is learn from life. I learn from my mistakes. That's the difference between how I used to be and now. You know, that's what makes me a better person. That's what helps me grow in sobriety. You know, I love the term in the back of the big book where it talks, or in the section in the back of the big book where it talks about the spiritual experience and the spiritual awakening. You know, I tell people that I help out or that I'm working with, don't expect sobriety to happen to you. Go out and get it. Earn it. I've had bright light spiritual experiences. I've met God praying for other people in my living room, you know. But I've also had something happen to me very slowly. I've woke up. You can see the whites of my eyes. I give a damn. I'm a different person. My motivations are different. Something is not the person that I was. You know, there's something hiding, I believe, in all of us, and that's a goodness. I don't believe we're all sinners. I don't believe anybody's bad people. You know, but we have to find a way to let that out. And for me, I'll just say this: it's reading, it's education, it's coming to meetings. It's a very integrated process. You know, I'm looking just like Dr. Bill did in Dr. Bill and the Good Old Timers. I'm looking for anything that's going to improve my sobriety today. I don't want to just be physically sober. I want to be mentally sober, emotionally sober, intuitionally sober, and spiritually sober. I stole that from somebody. It's from a Navy SEAL in the book, The Way of the SEAL. But if you read our material, that's the climb. That's the progression we can go through. You know, we all know those early days of sobriety is, I'm sober. It's almost like a dirty word, right? And today, so I'm sober, and you know, it annoys people. I know that. So that's a gift. That's a gift. You know, it's here. It's here and available for everybody. If I could offer any suggestions, is Don't expect it to happen to you. Go out and get it. You know, you never have to go back out and drink again. And I'm sorry, life can be more beautiful. Think about this. We all know hell on earth, right? If we didn't, why the hell would we be here? Because I'd still be out there probably. And if there's can be this bad hell now on earth, I guarantee you it could be so much better. The big book talks about the fourth dimension of existence. You know, it's here and it's available. If you want it, go and get it. If someone's not helping you to do it, find somebody who will. Ask me, I'm a big know-it-all. You know? But I love you guys. Thank you.